In other news, here tonight, an Ogdensburg lacrosse player faces an assault charge following alleged actions during a game against Malone. Malone Village Police Chief Andre William tells 7 News the charges of second-degree assault and endangering the welfare of a child were filed through Franklin County Juvenile Probation. It will likely move to family court next. The charges stem from a play April 20th posted on Facebook where it appears the Ogdensburg player intentionally uses his stick to strike the Malone player in the back of the head. That Malone player, Layden Pearson, suffered a concussion. Tuesday, Pearson's mother told 7 News her son is doing much better, but he still does have headaches. The Pearsons are the ones who pursued the charges. The Pearsons say the Ogdensburg player received a 5-day suspension. Since then, Section 10 Sports reviewed the play. This week, Mark Wilson told 7 News this was a clear violation of expected sportsmanship and as such was one of the few instances where an incident has risen to the level of the Sportsmanship Committee. That committee met and made a recommendation, performing their role with fidelity and professionalism. Wilson wouldn't describe the committee's decisions. Now, 7 News has learned that the school district levied more severe consequences against the player than what Section 10 was recommending. What the school did isn't known. District officials are not releasing that information.